I was born in Pajok, a small town of about 50,000 people in South Sudan, near the Ugandan border. Like most people in Pajok, I'm from the Acholi tribe, who live on both sides of the border between South Sudan and Uganda. Acholi people cook by digging a hole in the ground and lighting a fire with coal and wood. When I was about 3, I fell into an open fire and burnt off my fingers on both hands. My small 3-year-old fingers melted in the fire. However, there was no time to think about my fingers. We soon had to escape from the rebel soldiers and flee to Kakuma refugee camp, 434 kilometers away. We lived in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya for the next 7 years. My parents never treated me any differently. And in our poverty-stricken lives, we had no time for thinking or reflecting. I soon had a sister and 2 brothers, and we lived in a mud-thatched hut with 1 bed where my parents slept, and my siblings and I slept on the floor. We had plastic sheeting to protect our home from the rains and sandstorms that whipped ferociously through the camp, penetrating the walls and roofs of our shelter. I walked barefoot each day to fetch water and stood all day at the market to sell snacks so that we could have money to pay for food, because the food aid packages we received would only last 10 to 15 days. My hands were just part of my life, and I had to adapt to fit whatever task I was doing. And people staring, making comments, and talking among themselves also became part of my life. Before coming to Australia, I had 2 operations in Nairobi in the same year to separate my fingers, which had stuck together. This included grafting of skin from my left forearm and both thighs onto my hands. The time in hospital and recovery took about 6 months. We came to Australia in 2003. And not until my first day at the Intensive English Centre in primary school did I notice how different I was. Not only was I African, I did not speak English, and I had these deformity that I could not hide. I remember kids would stare at me, point, and laugh among themselves. Next day of school, I'll experience it all over again. There were 2 extremes with the kids. One was the attention of teasing, but far more frequently, what they did was avoid me. I was angry and resented my parents. I thought that Australia was the land of opportunity, but all I experienced was pain and humiliation. All I wanted to do was go back to the life I knew, which was a mud hut in a refugee camp where I slept on the floor. When I was about 11, I had a 3rd operation on my hands. This time, it was to open up my thumbs, which were stuck to the palms of my hands. It made me feel like I was broken goods that needed fixing and fixing. My sense of healing did not come from the 3 operations, but from a plaque on a hospital wall. I was never religious or went to church, but it said, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged." I decided I was not going to be discouraged and that I will be stubborn. In year 10, it was time to decide what subjects I was going to undertake in year 11, which would ultimately lead to universities. I wanted to go to university and I wanted to study for a Bachelor of Social Work. The career counselor said to me and my father that she did not think I was capable of completing the subjects that would lead to university. My father, who was a former school principal in Kakuma refugee camp, said, if Esther thinks she can do it, then she should try. So the school made my father sign a letter that stated, if I failed any of these subjects, then he as a parent would take responsibility and not the school. I know. Through year 11 and 12, that letter became my motivation. I got into Curtin University. Thank you. And completed my Bachelor of Social Work in 2016. 5 months ago, I got my first job with the Women's Health and Family Services. Thank you. Thank you. As a multicultural women's domestic violence advocate, and I'm now completing the African Leadership Initiative program to become a leader and inspire other young people. Thank you. My sister actually helped me type out my assignments for the first 2 years until my hands got used to it and no longer fatigued, and Curtin University gave me the extra time to complete my written exams. I live with my parents, 4 brothers and a sister. It's a long way from Pajok. My 5-year-old brother looks curiously at me when I teach him how to count. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But my family do not talk about my hands. My 5 siblings have never asked me what happened to my hands. I don't know what happened to my hands or how I fell into the fire, because my parents don't talk about it either. So, I'm talking to you. This is what happened. When I was 3, the fire in Pajok lit a fire inside me. When we lived in a refugee camp for 7 years with nothing, I stayed stubborn. When I had operations on hands that could not be fixed, I stayed stubborn. When I landed in school with no English and they saw no future for me, I stayed stubborn. These are my hands. My hands are not my destiny. They're my spirit. And my hands and I will stay stubborn. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.